Hi there. In this episode of Building a Modern Employer Brand podcast, you get to meet my colleague and employee, Nora. She just won the Magnetic Employer Brand Professional of the Year Award 2024 at Magnetic Employer Brand Awards in Finland. She and I will talk about her career, her growth into employer branding professional, and how working with the Magnetic Employer Branding method has not only helped many of our clients to take employer branding to new heights, but has also provided Nora and our other employees in the past a systematic structure to developing and growing as an employer branding professional. Last year, this same title was won by a former employee of ours, and this year, another former employee of ours was a finalist for this award. And one of our clients was a finalist for the award part for the in-house professional. So if this is your first time listening to this podcast, you are so welcome to join us in exploring the surprisingly delightful, different, and contagious world of modern employer branding with me, Susanna Rantanen, as your guide. I'm known as one of the world's top employer branding experts and employer branding business influencers, and this podcast sends you a weekly dose of modernized employer branding education and inspiration to keep you ahead of the competition and support your personal development and growth journey as an employer branding professional. This is part 1. Hey, welcome to the Building a Modern Employer Brand podcast show, Nora.
Hello.
Congratulations on your very recent title. You won the Magnet Employer Brand Award for the Best Employer Brand Professional of the Year 2024, just a couple of weeks ago. Can you introduce yourself to our audience? Because you actually are a lot behind this podcast, but you've never been in front of this podcast. So our audience doesn't even know from that perspective your role and what you do, who you are, what do you do, how did you end up here in employer branding agency?
Yeah, sure. And thank you, Susanna, first of all. Thank you for inviting me and having me here. It's so funny to be on this side of the podcast for the very first time. And yeah, I'm really excited about this. But yeah, so my name is Nora Nykänen. I'm originally from Helsinki, Finland, and now happily living in Vantaa with my boyfriend and our black Labrador retriever Nuppo. Professionally, my journey began in recruitment, where I gained experience both in large corporations and also as an in-house recruiter and as a consultant in a smaller agency. And about 2.5 years ago, after 2 years of dating, my path led me to Emine, where I currently operate as a talent marketing consultant. So around helping our clients with their employer branding needs, whether it's crafting strategies, creating engaging content, or providing guidance throughout their employer branding journey. Personally, I tend to see things from a positive angle. I like to think my glass is full, always half full rather than half empty. What else? I have a passion for travel and discovering new places, and with Italy holding a particularly special place in my heart.
Yes,
and
me too.
Yeah, and that's I think that's a bit about me in a nutshell, and I'm, like I said, really excited to dive into our conversation today with you.
One thing I want to tap into before we move to the next question that we planned, but you mentioned that after 2 years of dating. So do you want to share with our audience this, a specific recruitment practice of dating our prospective new employees? How did that go with you?
We go back to like 2017, and maybe it was 2017. I entered my very first job in recruiting, and I would say the first spark ignited back then during your coaching session for our team, and I think it was about employer branding in social media, and I was immediately drawn in. And back then, working in recruitment, I was really curious about how to attract the right employees to choose us as the employer, and that training day left a lasting impression on me because it sparked warm feelings about Susanna and about the method. And one important thing I realized during the session was that in industries where there's a shortage skilled workers, employees, the focus shouldn't just be on us recruiters and our hiring needs, but on what the professionals want from their workplace. And this realization stayed with me for a long time and eventually led me to shift my focus from recruitment to employee branding and talent marketing. This kind of a background story. And I remember that I already was an active listener of your Finnish podcast, Vaikuttava työnantaja brändi. It was my weekly routine to listen to your podcast and learn more and more, and became really curious about employee branding. And I was so excited and inspired and started to think that how could we get more known and attractive as an employer? Since as a known Finnish brand, everybody recognized us from a customer perspective. But in recruitment interviews, I noticed that people didn't know much about us as an employer.
And with us, you now refer to Fatser.
Yeah.
That was your employer at the time in 2017.
Yeah, exactly.
And for those who don't know, Fatser is a really, really well-known Finnish consumer brand for all sorts of nice sweets that we love very much.
Yeah, exactly. And from there, I continued my journey with recruiting quite some time and moved from a large company to consultant. And all this time, I listened to your podcast, and it was my, as I said, weekly routine, and got more and more excited about employer branding. And I felt like my background in recruitment would help me as an EB professional as well, since recruiting had given me a 360 view of the company and its people. In addition, I felt that in employer branding, I would get to utilize my creative side on visuals and copywriting and storytelling. So yeah, finally, it was 2019. I contacted Susanna on LinkedIn, and I believe saying that, hey, I love your podcast, and if you ever have an open position, I would be interested to start a conversation. And well, then we know what happened in 2020. Yeah, but after that, we set up the first meeting, and it was like a casual get to know each other meeting. And first with the Emine team, and then later on, I met you for the first time at Emine's office in Helsinki. You had at the time, and I still remember that conversation so vividly. I think it was about 2.5 hour conversation, and I instantly felt that the connection with you, and I felt that working at Emine would be a dream. I felt that it ticked all my boxes, so that was the start of the journey. And then finally in 2021 in November, I joined Emine. So we dated a few years, but before I joined Emine, and I really liked that because I felt that I got to know you really good before I joined Emine.
Yeah, and that is so much part of the magnetic employer branding method.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the couple of episodes just recently have been about building your employer brand is like dating, isn't it? For us, it's part of the Emine employer brand is to get to know people in our target audience, prospective candidates and future employees of our agency. First, casually build those friendships and that relationship over time to figure out if we are the right connection, right match with each other. We start this process with everyone who ever sends an application to us. Sometimes we date people for a very short time and we find out like, no, we're not a match to each other. And sometimes we date for a longer because we pursue that relationship, but the time is not right. We're not hiring at that time. And then with people like Nora and many others who have worked for us in the past, we've dated for a year, 2 years, even longer before the time was right. And you also you changed places to work with during this time that we dated. And I remember that you once also asked me, like, well, if I'm going to now take a job somewhere else, is that going to ruin my chances of ever getting a job with Eminem? I said, like, no, of course not. You go ahead and, build your career and grow those experiences. And, if we're meant to be, it will happen. And so it did. So that's a big part of the Magnetic Employer brand, the whole method and the whole sort of concept behind it, that how you build your employer brand is building and nurturing those relationships with your ideal audience. And of course, it doesn't mean that, we don't nurture our relationship with everyone who's ever sent us their application or become part of our sort of external drive, like face to face. More of that nurturing happens online with, casual encounters and direct messages and, asking like, how are you doing, or commenting each other's posts and things like that. Some of the people then when the dating casually, many people becomes more serious with one people, then you kind of move forward and it takes a different kind of different kind of role.
That make a big difference, that those little things that you ask, like, how are you doing, is everything okay, and how was your summer, and so on. And so it was the little things that make a big difference in the end for me, at least.
It's so lovely to hear. And you also mentioned that this podcast and the Finnish version of this podcast was actually a big part of your employer brand development or growth story, that it was kind of a learning platform for you.
For a long time, And when I started to listen to the podcast, I didn't know what employer branding meant. It was something, I would say, completely new, or at least I hadn't heard of it that much since I just entered my very first entry-level job. But I became really curious, and I remember thinking that this woman knows what she's talking about, and I want to know more, and I want to learn more, and I did, because I thought that employer branding is something similar to recruitment marketing, but then I learned that it isn't. They are different things. And I learned.
What's your biggest revelation on that? What made you finally sort of like, hey, these are not the same thing?
The reversal change in the mindset, that it's not about us, it's about them. That gave me that aha moment, that okay, this is
the
something
else.
Else.
The hero.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was the turning point for me, and realization that recruitment marketing isn't employee branding, and these two have different type of goals, for example.
And oftentimes also different target audiences. The people may be the same, or become the same, but where they are in their life cycle, in their careers, their needs are not the same. So you're actually tapping into people during different times of their life and their career, based on what their needs are. So that's what makes these target audiences different.
Exactly.
Cool. So you already mentioned a little bit about like what initially attracted you to the field of employer branding, and also Eminem. Can you sort of, because now it's we never talk about this stuff, do we? Like, what was it about Eminem that made you feel that this was the place to be? So share with us.
And actually, this was something that I like this question. I really, really do, because I don't think about it that often. So this is really good. I think I was convinced that Eminem was the place where I would learn the most about employer branding and learn from the best in this industry, meaning you, Susanna.
Thank you.
It was also the kind of a strong bond and feeling of belonging instantly the first time we met. I loved that Eminem was so small, and having worked in bigger companies and bigger teams, I felt that a smaller team would be something that I enjoy. And I was also really interested about knowing how how your method, the magnetic employer branding method, works in practice. So I wanted to learn that, and ultimately it was the feeling that at Emine or Emine would offer me something that I wouldn't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
The role, the method, the amount of expertise in employer branding, and
Mm-hmm.
the uniqueness of the small Emine team as well.
Yeah.
One last thing was also that I'm quite entrepreneurial spirit myself, and I felt that here I would get my hands dirty. So that was it in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So,
and we have had a bigger team in the past, but I've never been, and this is funny because my entrepreneur stories obviously started with Hebo and in tech recruitment, or not tech recruitment, but recruitment tech, sorry. When I was fresh entrepreneur, I thought that my entrepreneur journey should be what was sort of painted in the startup scene, that what you do is you develop this software. That's the kind of entrepreneurship that you want to do, that you want to go into software development, then you have your own app, get it to the world, you get these investors, you move to Silicon Valley and you build this big company, and then you do an exit, and then you do whatever. And over those years that I was building that tech business, I realized that this is not the kind of entrepreneur that I am, nor I want to be. I don't share that vision that I thought that I had to adopt as an entrepreneur. We did found Emine with my husband while I also had this other business. So I was running these both parallel for several years. And it became very evident to me that I'm not driven by scaling fast, building a big company, hiring lots of people, and then selling it. It doesn't excite me at all. I'm driven by developing this industry, scaling the industry up, helping businesses and people in this industry to understand what you can do with employer branding to create that kind of a win-win where talents and company missions, purposes match. And when we had a bigger team at Emine, it was so much more to me about leading the team and doing like all sorts of admin stuff than actually getting my hands dirty. And ever since we decided to scale down and stay small in terms of headcount, I've been the happiest in my entrepreneur career because I get to do the actual work with the clients, with you, with my husband, with all the people that work for our customers. And that's like the dream of having a small, I think we are a small team, but our impact is really large.
Yeah, I agree totally.
Yeah, like leading this sprint in the whole global employer branding community and helping employer branding professionals like you to get really excited about modern employer branding, and growing your careers and helping those organizations to become really successful because of the people and what they provide for their people. That, which is part of the magnetic employer branding matter, the pursuit for a better life, not just now, but like every day and for the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good story actually, because I think that's what working life is all about. It's about finding your place. It can take time. You need to experiment and learn what works for you, what doesn't work, and exactly
I realized this when I was like 45.
Yeah.
And a little bit older. I'm not telling you how much older, but it wasn't until 45 plus.
yeah.
So you guys have plenty of time.
There are plenty of time, and there are people that spend their whole career in the same place, and they are really happy. But then there are also people that are miserable, but they don't do anything about it, and that makes me sad.
Yeah, that's true. But and it could be like for me as well. Like I've had really wonderful workplaces and employmentships before I became an entrepreneur. And I've had such great times as an entrepreneur during different seasons and with different, people, growing both of the companies. But now that I look back and compare, I am the happiest now.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've really found, and it has a lot to do with you too, because, this is what we have been talking about a lot, like what you bring to us and to our trio, and how we just share a lot of the same aspirations and values, and I like to work in the same ways. And so let's talk about your journey, your growth journey to the employer branding professional of the year. So reflecting on your journey, how has the magnetic employer branding method influenced your professional development? Now, you started with saying that, this is what you learn. You learned bits and pieces of it from the podcast over the years. But then you obviously joined us because you also wanted to learn, like, how does this thing come together? How does this thing work in practice?
Well, I think magnetic employer branding method is to thank why I'm here today. If we think about my journey from the very beginning, I like to say that I'm a perfect example of how the magnetic employer branding method works. If we think the candidate journey of the information era, which is crucial part of the magnetic employer branding method, the journey begins with winning the talent's attention, then raising the awareness, building affinity, and finally, in the end of the candidate journey, is the value conversion. And because first, when we reverse back to 2017, you got my attention when you held that coaching session at Patser, and I listened to your podcast already. So gradually, I learned more and more. I became really curious about employer branding and Emine as a workplace too. And throughout the years, I became really engaged, and that engagement led me to take the first step to contact you personally, and the affinity grew stronger as we started dating, and I learned more about you, and I get to know you better. After a few years of dating, we got that into that conversion part, which is crucial in the magnetic employer branding method too, that I joined Emine team. So I like to use this example when I'm talking about the magnetic employer branding method, because I'm perfect example of that. How that works.
Yes, you are. That's a really good way to describe it, because that's true. So let me just recap that. So I won your sustainable attention from that one training session that I held, that you participated at. You then started to pay attention to my content, my social media posts, and you found the podcast. You started to listen to that. So that podcast, or this podcast, was giving you value that you needed in that phase of your life and your career. And it started to inspire you. It started to give you answers to questions that you were able to use in your work at the time, and build your knowledge and grow your career, so that you got the next job and the next job before you finally ended with us. Then, as it made you then approach me and contact me, which then started the affinity phase, and through the dating. And this is now where you also got to know about me and about our team and about us. So this was the phase, the affinity phase. That's the content pillar 2 in the method. And then we obviously we kept in touch. You were still obviously listening to the podcast and all the content, but now you also paid attention to content that was about the team and about Emine as well, because now you wanted to obviously learn more about us as you were evaluating whether this is something that you want to, whether we are the one that you want to date, continue dating. And then became the value conversion today, when we started to actually talk about your potential role here and when could you start working here and so on. Perfect. I'm gonna use that as well.
Go ahead. I think yeah, it's really good, and it's kind of funny too. But yeah,
In Finnish they have this saying that I'm trying to think if there's an English version of it, but like tailor's kids don't have like clothes.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it is like that the whoever preaches about something, they're not actually doing it. But I feel that this method is so deeply engraved in our DNA, in our souls, because we've been working with it and developing it and iterating it and fine-tuning it throughout all these years with our, obviously through the customer work that we've learned more about, how the method works and doesn't work and different customer scenarios, but also through the, as I've been studying and learning more and more about persuasive communication and storytelling and all these over the years. So I've added more like depth into it, if you like.
Yeah.
As someone who has grown significantly under this impact of the magnetic employer branding method, what aspect of the method do you think has been most beneficial for your career growth?
I really need to think about this because, there are so many I can tap into. But I think the first and the biggest thing has been the change in the mindset for me. So what makes the method such a powerful method is the role reverse. So talent is a hero. In your employee branding story, it's not about you, it's about them. So I think that's the biggest thing, and that's a unique lesson I picked up early on. It took me some time to fully grasp its significance and how to leverage role reversal in, for example, EB content. But today I couldn't do it any other way. Secondly, of course, storytelling and the content creation process. I had previous experience of creating content, but you have taught me so much about it, how to make the process more efficient and how to use different social media hooks, for example, and how to use words in crafting compelling stories and winning sustainable attention of the target audience. And furthermore, I've learned a lot about numbers and KPIs, value conversions and data, which are pivotal in employer branding. This understanding has eliminated the link between business objectives and employer branding goals, emphasizing the importance of alignment there. Continuous analysis is crucial to evaluate what works and what doesn't work and ensure where we are on track to meet our objectives. And I think learning all this has offered me quite unique skill set that I can now utilize and share with our clients, for example.
And I think this I love hearing that, how much like how much that has affected your growth, because it's quite often that in our work with clients, there is such a lack of self-confidence in this particular part. Many of our clients who have not worked with employer branding that much, they feel very uncomfortable with the value conversions part. They often say let's not focus on that. Let's focus on just us learning how to do this. And I would say that the best way to learn how to do this is literally using the data and the numbers, especially the marketing data, to understand employer branding being such a long-term, it's a marathon. So that's the only feedback that you can get really quickly that shows you whether what you're doing is working or doesn't work. So I find myself not always being good enough to really convince them to kind of be bold enough and just over this imaginary gate or fence or thing to the side of where you fear numbers and you fear that, because especially with clients like that, we start with very basic data, really simple basic data, just to get them used to the idea of following up, measuring the impact of their work. And it's like the biggest feedback that you can get is when you don't even have to wait for anyone else to give you that feedback. You just look at the numbers and feel like, wow, this is working. So I'm so glad to hear that part for you has been a big thing and has helped you, because it's so important. And I also have to say that I love that you mentioned the connection between the business objectives and employer branding, because oftentimes we also hear how we don't have the budget for employer branding, or we don't have enough budget for employer branding, or we don't have a budget to buy this service from you. What can we do with this? Can we just do a little campaign or something? Can we just do 2 videos? And the reason why you don't have a budget is because employer branding to the top management is a cost, because they believe it's just about making a couple of videos. When you understand the value conversions and you understand how to connect, and this is, of course, our clients get this from us, we help them to figure this out. But when there is that connection, that link between the business and the employer branding, and the value conversions are actually business worthy, like they are worth money for the business, money coming back from this work, then all of a sudden, this is not a cost anymore. This is an investment. And you can show your boss or the top management, like, listen, you gave me this budget. Look, that this is how much it provided you profit. If we X that, then we can get this much more of this profit, or we can get actually that profit, because that requires a little bit bigger investment. My ambition and goal is to build this awareness and the affinity to this data, to those goals, to connect in business objectives with employer branding, not just with employer branding professionals, but also at the business side, at the management side. So they understand that, wait, this is a tool. This method is a tool.
Exactly.
This is not just something that we just post something funny on LinkedIn. No, this is a tool that delivers money back to the business, the kind of money that you want it to deliver. We can define that, we can go after that, and we can create that. That's it, my friends. This was episode part 1 about Nora's growth journey as an employer branding professional of the year. What did you think about it? Are you as inspired by Nora's story as I am? And I know that many others are here in Finland. If yes, let Nora know. And come back next week to hear the part 2 of her growth journey with us on Building a Modern Employer Brand podcast. And as always, you can find the show notes for this episode and the links to Nora's profiles on modernemployerbrand.com/podcast 183. Moi moi!